Hi, I'm back again to talk about Song of Solomon and just have some thoughts about it. One of the thoughts I've had is that it might be easier for people who want to learn to keep these sessions shorter than the half hour that they have been so far. So we're just going to have a look at a couple of little thoughts, and hopefully it'll only be about 10, well, at least less than 15 minutes long. I'll try and keep to 10 if I can. But the things in the Song of Solomon are just so amazing that I want everybody to be able to feed from them and receive from them and just feel their hearts loved by God, and to feel that love that gives you the confidence to go out in your life and do the things that He's called you to do. And I don't want to rush through it, so we shall just take some bits shortly. So last time in session 3 we looked at dark am I yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem. Dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. And we talked about how she was saying that she recognized that even though she was dark, and that word meaning absence of light or absence of color, that she was still lovely to the groom. That we, although we have nothing to bring to this relationship other than ourselves, we have no color to add, that we're still beautiful to Jesus. And she likens herself to the tent curtains of Kedar, which were the nomads of the time, and they used to use goat skin that was really dark, that stood out with quite contrast to the golden sands and the deserts where they lived. And she recognized that her darkness caused her to stand out, against the beauty, against the perfection of her groom. Her darkness stood out. But then she also said, like the tent curtains of Solomon, because he's known to have had black, really dark curtains around his bedchambers, and yet they were classed not as being the contrast on the sand, but they were classed as being lush and rich and amazing. And because she belonged to Solomon, that meant that even her darkness was lush and rich, that she was amazing in his sight, and she'd realized that. But then she said, do not stare at me because I am dark, because I'm darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. And for me, this one verse 6, it talks about our responsibilities in life. One, she says she's dark because of the sun. Well, how do you get dark because of the sun? Only if you're out in the sun do you get darkened by the sun. And she follows it up by saying she was taking care of the vineyards that didn't belong to her, that she was been set to work by others, her mother's sons. So she was out and about doing things. And this often talks about the fact that the darkness in our lives, that our inability to bring something light and good to God, comes from the things we do in our daily life. To me, the darkened by the sun represents our daily life, and how often the things in our daily life are the things that darken us, and the things that keep us away from the purity and the beauty of God and allowing Him to work in us, can be what comes in our lives because of daily life. And where was it in scripture where someone said, oh, don't just wash my feet, wash all of me. And Jesus said, I don't need to wash all of you because you are clean by the washing of the word, just your feet. And it was because your feet go through the daily life. And he was saying daily you need to be cleansed of the things that get attached to you, the things that muck you up, the things from the world that you carry with you simply by walking through life. And that, I believe, is how she was darkened through her walk through life. And it actually reminds me of about 4 years ago, I was in a conference. It was Jared Cooper at Kingdom Faith. And after the meeting, there was time just to worship God. And I ended up just worshiping God at the back of the building and the back of the room. And I had a powerful experience, and I saw a shallow cup. I think they might be something like a champagne glass. I don't really know much about glasses, but it's kind of that shape, really shallow. And I knew God was saying that was me. And I was hurt. That God was saying that I couldn't hold very much, that I was a shallow glass. And for days, because it was so strong and so powerful on me, for days I was hurt about the fact that God was saying I was shallow. that didn't hold very much, and I saw bits spilling out the side of me because something was being poured into me and it was dropping over the sides, and it really upset me until after about 5 days I realised what he was saying. That was because I was shallow, I couldn't hold very much, so I needed daily refilling. And what he was saying to me was, don't think you've got it all. Never think you've got enough to keep you going. You need filling daily. And I knew he was talking to me about my daily relationship with him, with my daily walk with him, my need to daily read scripture, daily spend time communing with him, considering his word, receiving his love, worshipping, listening to worship, listening to teaching. It had to be a daily thing. And I realized why very soon, because I leak. I leak quite badly. More so in those days. It was like I would be fired up with God and so excited with him, and within a few days I could be back to where I was previously. And that fire that I'd received from something in the word or a teaching I'd heard or somehow I'd been stirred up was gone. And I discovered the only way to keep myself fired up with God was to keep being filled. Every day I needed to receive something from him. And that it was only at that point when I really made every effort to make sure I certainly had time with God every single day. And I saw myself gradually get stronger and stronger, and the food that I was receiving from him was lasting. So I think that that's what he's talking about here when he says, when you're darkened by the sun, you're darkened by daily living, by going out and about and living your life. So we need to remember to keep daily cleansing. And she says, my mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I'd had to neglect. Now, I don't want to get into the mother's sons bit, although often mother represents the church. So you could say this was the fellow brothers and sisters in the church. But they made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. She had something that needed caring for herself, but she let other people's responsibilities, other people's thoughts and ideas for her and desires for her to do, to be prioritized, to come first. She submitted to other people's hopes and dreams rather than caring for her own vineyard. And I think that is really something that we have to be careful of. There are so many good things that can be done on this planet and in our own church, in our own lives, in our own families. There's a lot. There's many ministries we can get involved with. There's many ministries we can support. There are so many opportunities in life that we could give ourselves to. But what about your own vineyard? What about the thing that God has called you to do, that he's asked you specifically to care about and to look after, or that you felt a bubbling? You may not have really heard and you may not be totally certain, but there's something that's important to you that you want to do. I'd suggest that you go for that and that you lay off everything else that hinders and you concentrate on the thing that he's called you to, because this added to her darkening because she was going about somebody else's daily business instead of her own. And it is easy to find yourself trapped by other people's hopes and dreams for you, other people's ideas. I remember hearing a story once of how this young man, he really loved God and wanted to serve God, and everybody around him said he should be a pastor, and he trained and he became a pastor, and he struggled with it. He found it so hard to do, and the church dwindled and became a very small and weak church. And eventually he thought, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. But the love in his heart, believe it or not, was administration. And so he gave up being a pastor and he went into doing administration, paperwork, secretarial work, things like that. And he thrived, and everything he went to thrived because he was doing the thing that God called him to do. When he was being a pastor, he was doing what other people called him to, that people thought he should do. It wasn't from his own heart. But when he did the thing that God called him to, then he thrived, and the work he was in thrived, and he was able to be the person God called him to be. And I'd say the same thing to you. What is it that you're called to, that you have a desire to do? Try to block off for the moment what everybody else says you should do, or the responsibilities that just come in your life. Yes, we have responsibilities that we do need. We do need to care for our children. We do need to work and earn a living. We do need to honour our mother and father and care for them when needed. And there are things like that. But We must always keep the first priority as the thing that God's called us to. So just ask yourself, are there things in your life that are not your first priority? They're somebody else's. Like you've taken on from a good sense of duty. It's a good thing to have that sense. But really, we need to put first what matters most. We need to put first the thing that God's put in our heart. And sometimes that can feel selfish, but if it's what God's called us to, then that is the thing that we really should be doing. For years, I struggled with the fact that all I wanted to do was spend time in prayer and studying the Word, and I felt that that was really selfish, and I needed to be doing other things. Every time I did that, I felt a bit guilty until I kept reading and reading all these people that have to do with the learning that I'm on, different books and biologies from people who felt the same. And they ended up working for God and doing the things for God because they took time to pour their energy into what He called them to do. And finally, I feel free to do that, to spend all my time, or the majority of my time, fulfilling the call that God has for me, and then I can be the person He's called me to be, and that can benefit others. And because I'm just that tiny little cog in the huge, if you think of the inside, if you've ever opened a watch, if you think of the inside of a watch, there's all these little cogs and bits and pieces, and each one of us is only one tiny part of that. But if you take out even the tiniest part, the watch either stops working or loses time or gains time, and it's not suitable for its job. And we are all part of a body, and we need all the parts of the body to work the job that they're supposed to do. As Paul says, if everyone were eyes, where would the hearing be? If all were ears, where would the seeing be? And so you need to do the thing that God's called you to be. So I would say take a word of advice from this bride. She's realized that she's become darkened and that she's been neglecting her own vineyard. And I say to you, what are you neglecting that God has called you to? And what can you lay down so that you can give more of your time to the things that God's called you to? And I pray that as you do that, as you say to God, okay, Lord, what am I neglecting? And what things do I need to lay down because they make me too busy to do what I really feel I want to do in my spirit? I pray that He'll open your ears to that, or you will open your ears and He'll speak, and you'll find absolute peace and comfort and contentment as you step out into taking care of your own vineyard. Anyway, we shall continue on another time, and hopefully we'll be able to again stick to these few minutes so that you can fit it in when you're having a cup of tea in your break. Anyway, blessings, and see you again soon. Bye now.